Good morning and cheers. We have the coffee. Is learning lost? Let's think about that for a minute. Is learning lost? Is all learning lost? Is there learning? Is there active learning? Is there participation? Is like what's going on? What do we need to do to get that action Jackson, as I say sometimes? Well, we're talking about form. We're continuing our conversation on musical forms, intro to form, kind of getting the ball rolling with some more form things in music appreciation. So as I continue that part of the series, the elements of music and digging into all the different elements, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments and vocals, and it's like, okay, we got to get this form flow going on a little bit more. Well, what can we do? One of the things I do is think about, well, what if we talk about something like Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers? We listen to it straight up, just take some notes, no preconceived notions, opinions, or ideas, just get it all down on paper. Here's the song, the group is Chili Peppers, song is Under the Bridge. Let's just listen to the song and write whatever. Just get something down. What do you think about the song? Anything. I mean, really, I just said listen to the song and write your thoughts. That was really it. And what I thought I could do to make it interesting was, okay, cool, we're done listening to the song. Go around the room, class discussion. What did you think? What are your thoughts, ideas? And then the next step after that was, of course, play the song again. But before that, give a few parameters on the second listen and say, okay, so in our intro to form lecture previously, we had talked about what is an intro, what is an outro, what are verses, what are choruses, what is a transition, bridge. We can use transition, bridge synonymously, but they also can be used in different ways. Where we talked about how transitorial transition material can be long, medium, short, but if we use transition and bridge maybe in the same paragraph, story, whatever, that you could think of maybe the transitions in popular music being like a hair shorter and bridges being longer connections, but they do kind of serve those same functions. Could be used synonymously or could be used a little bit separately if you kind of delineate it. This is a transition because it's shorter, and this is the bridge because it's connecting those two land masses with water cavernous underneath, or however you kind of think about the bridge in music, which is connecting sections or whatever. Music leading you to maybe the apex, the pinnacle, like the whoa, the song is out, it's done, kind of thing. Well, we can use transitions and bridges, of course, in all genre styles of funky music. At any rate, the whole point being is like, okay, we're listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers Under the Bridge, and we're not talking about the stories yet. That's a different class. We talk about the stories behind very particular songs, and that's a common thread in all of music appreciation, where stories behind the music it's important. The elements of music, they are important. Talking about different time periods, of course, in music appreciation, Baroque, classical, romantic, etc. More, and before and beyond, of course, in those periods. So the idea here is talk about some songs like Under the Bridge and try to figure out what's happening, what's going on. So we listen to the song with those parameters in mind in terms of all the vocabulary, intro, outro, verse, chorus, solos, transitions, these kind of things. And I think what we're trying to figure out is like, can we kind of label all that and put it in there? About some more coffee here. Coffee time with Professor Ron. So as the students listened, myself along with them, they get some stuff down. We listen to the song all the way through, and they're able to kind of figure out a good bit of the song. And we're not using fancy computers and phones. Everyone's in some chairs, desks, and we're just in the class, and we got paper, pencil, pen. We're really just taking notes and using speakers and a stereo system. Just listen to the music and talk about it for this particular class. And pretty fun, pretty awesome. It was very cool, went very well. I suppose that's supposed to be safe for the end, right? But it was a pretty amazing, awesome class and super fun for all of us. When they got to the end of Under the Bridge, I tried to steer them away from the stories or anything they knew about the song, because some people know it, because the whole point in this particular class was not the story, but just getting into the form and the flow, and not worrying about scales and chords. That's not really part of the class necessarily. I could talk about that, and maybe some of them know if they play in band, maybe they play flute, clarinet, maybe they're percussionist, violinist, guitarist, bands. They sure, all that stuff's like really cool. But I think the big thing is we enjoy the nature, cars, the birds, everything, trees, sound, buzzing. Outside, it's kind of cool hanging with you out here. So really, it wasn't about right or wrong. What I was trying to get them to think about is, do you hear where the intro is? Do you hear where the verses are and the choruses are? And do you know what's going on in the song? Can you use those vocabulary words we've talked about in class and basically apply them to that particular song? And the whole heart of the matter was, if you can do it to Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, then you'll have a much easier time and maybe a more enjoyable or fun time doing that in something like Mozart's Night Music or Beethoven's Symphony 5. Maybe you'll have a more enjoyable time doing this in Hector Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique, Spring by Vivaldi. Maybe Bach's Concerto Grosso number 5, Movement 1. You would think it'd be far-fetched, but if you can figure out where the melodies are and where the solos are, and train your ears to find those, maybe these different voices of soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and of course more voices in that, you're getting practice at kind of figuring things out, melody and harmony and rhythm and solos and what's going on with the form. You're kind of, it's pretty helpful, at least I hope it is. So we talked about what was in the song, and we were able to figure out, okay, cool, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Under the Bridge, it starts off with an intro. So in that intro, you have John Frusciante just playing some wicked guitar. It's killer. You go from that intro and the song, and then after that, you're going to get, of course, Anthony comes in with the verse. Now, I didn't give him any of this, and it's going to keep going in terms of the flow of the form, but they were able to pick out that, hey, there is an intro, outro. The challenge was they kind of got lost in, they couldn't figure out all the verses, or was the last thing I heard a chorus. But that's why they're there. They're there to learn. So they all kind of figured out, hey, I knew where the verse comes in, but it was hard to kind of figure out where them transitions were, or is there some kind of counter chorus in there or whatever. It kept leading them to try to figure out, more about what the song is about, and certainly that's a tough thing to kind of push back on or hold, hey, look, we're going to save the story for another time. But we had great conversation on talking about, what is the drummer Chad Smith doing on those transitions? When Chad Smith is playing them transitions in between verses, can you hear what's happening with the guitar and how it changes? So, in these different transitions in the song, there are points where there's a little more action happening, maybe on the drum set, or different timbral sound effects happening on the drum set. But there's also some ever so slightly different guitar things happening in the song, even in the transitions. But even as much as when you get to the outro, and you have, John and Flea playing together at the very end, many students might even miss that Flea, the bassist, is actually playing in the end. And if you kind of just, I don't want to say ignore John because he's amazing, but if you just focus on that bass line at the end of the song, you may have not known it was there, and it's just, man, it is really cool. And there's one part in the song where it's, people call it, is it the bridge, is it the counter chorus, is it the secondary chorus? I don't see wrong answers. Now, what you have going in the song, and what we eventually got to in the discussion as listening to it and having that class discussion, was, it wasn't active learning in the sense of everybody coming up to the room or bringing single students up to the room. That what made this truly active and interactive was listening actively first, and then having, I'm asking the students questions, and I'm piggybacking off of things maybe that they say, and then other students are kind of chiming in. It gets really exciting, so I think, all learning is not lost, and active learning can be in all kinds of modalities. Active learning doesn't have to be a shenanigan. Active learning doesn't have to be where, goodness, you give them an assignment and just walk around. Active learning is participatory in whatever mode or flow that you do. Today was a frustrating day because, what I found out, and I've known for a very, very long time, and I've been trying to work through it, is the modern day learner and, many of the typical college courses at universities, there are some things that are kind of all flipped upside down. What do I mean? Well, straight up, students don't take notes in a class, and it can be a little bit frustrating. I think that if we can get back to some note taking, it would really help students. Taking notes, it's one of the gateways to learning and remembering and critical thinking and making connections. So taking notes was a concern for me in one of my classes today, and for some classes they're amazing at taking notes. For others, it feels like it's a split decision. It's all over the map on note taking and retention percentages and all this and that. Math aside, it can be frustrating when you're giving whether it's a mini lecture, long lecture, whatever the lecture is. If you're giving some kind of lecture in a class, like I teach music appreciation or American music, you're teaching these live face-to-face classes and no one's taking notes. It's like, well, what are you doing? So this was a frustrating thing to see today, and in other classes and other times there's been some of that. So what are some other things maybe with the modern day learner that others may be struggling with? Well, students don't always want to do work at home, but they also don't want to do work in the class. And this is an interesting one. So I've tried experiments where we will do assignments together in class. So we're in music appreciation, and there'll be, say, a journal, like listen to Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, and let's talk, take some notes, let's talk it through as a class and have some fun with it. And sometimes it goes really amazing, and other times people won't watch the video. They'll be right there in the class playing on their phone, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, playing video games, or they will do the assignment. And I guess depending on how the class is set up, if you're running it in a lab or if I'm just using one big screen, they kind of have no choice. But even when I'm in a classroom that has one big screen and I run it from there, or if I'm in a lab for some reason, they both have their unique challenges. So in this particular class I was teaching in today, I didn't get to actually pick the room. The room is actually a computer lab. Not sure that's working out too well. We'll see, but probably the change I'll have to make right away is get everything on the big screen, and everyone's got to be actively engaged to the assignment. But you don't always have control of your rooms necessarily, or all the technology or things but certainly we can chime in and improve those, of course, absolutely. But I think the bigger thing here is students not taking notes. Like the modern day learner feels like they can memorize their whole life. And it doesn't work that way. The brain doesn't work that way. You can't memorize your whole life. You're lucky to remember 30% from, an hour-long lecture or even a 30-minute lecture. And taking notes helps that retention. Having the lecture recorded, audio and or video, that certainly can increase the percentage. Notes increases the percentage. Some PowerPoints, possibly pictures. There's a lot of things in terms of, visual stimulation and writing. Everything's not about rote memorization. Sure, there's some things that you have to do that in terms of different disciplines or whatever. You're in a math class, you need to memorize the formulas. Absolutely. You're in chemistry. Yeah, you got to memorize the periodic table of elements. It's not that hard. It's made hard because people just wait till the last minute to figure all this stuff out, and you just got to do the work. So the frustration from the class today, not just today, but and it's not that all my classes are like that. I have some amazing students and amazing classes all over the place, where I'm at. But I do think that it's a challenge to get students to take notes and to do their work sometimes. It's a challenge to have class discussions. So basically today there wasn't a lot of note taking going on, but that wasn't even really the worst part. I think the worst part was people didn't prepare before the class. So if you have a book to read, you got to read, like, you need to read the poem, read the text, read the chapters. If you're in history and you got a couple chapters to read, or even just one chapter or 5 pages or 100 pages, whatever the page requirement is, the idea behind reading a book in the class and connecting to the lecture is you're able to connect to the learning more. If you're taking a college class and there's a required book or required books, if you don't read the book before you go to class, it's quite a challenge to understand it. I mean, if you're a brilliant genius, cool, kudos to you. But the whole world it isn't. A lot of us are just average people, and there's nothing wrong with being average. So look, while I'm hampering on taking notes, it's certainly super important, and that's probably the common denominator, common thread that I'm seeing. Like, not enough people are taking notes in college courses, and taking notes is an essential thing for development and growth and learning and connecting and critical thinking and on and on and on. But even before the note taking, maybe this is a cardinal sin. Maybe note taking has to be number one. But even before the note taking, like, there's got to be something that comes before that. So if it's a TED talk that's 10 minutes or 30 minutes, or if it's a video lectures, or if you're reading chapters in a book, those things help prepare you for the live in-class action in a live face-to-face class, whether it's music appreciation, American music, history 1, history 2, government, Texas government, all these different classes, intro to philosophy, the list goes on and on and on. So, if you're a student and you really want to learn, if you want to embrace the learning, then we've got to embrace what's called active learning. And so, like, active learning, when we talk about this maybe in 2024 and leading into 2025, it's really simple. We don't need a 8-minute YouTube video or a 2-hour class or a 16-week course to talk about active learning. It's super simple. Active learning is just participatory. It's participation. Active learning is not a teacher going into a class and lecturing for an hour or hour and 15 minutes or whatever, maybe it's an hour and a half or whatever the case may be. Active learning, it's both sides of the table participating. It's almost like a partnership, a team. And so while lecturing, yes, is still absolutely essential and important, it doesn't need to be, you don't have to read, 20 pages of notes from a lectern and then barely have time for a Q&A at the end. There's not really a right or wrong way to do any of this stuff. There's so many different ways to learn and teach. The trick is to try to find what is going to be, we've thought about, like, engagement, but you can't have an engaging course if you're, you have to be a master of the subject content area, and pretty much we all are, aren't we? I mean, we are, as we are the best we can be. And so if you're like just super awesome on your subject matter and content, and you want to make it engaging, and I want to make it engaging, we all want to make it engaging. It's not even the next step. It has to come a little bit later. So to make it engaging, you got to be really prepared. The professor's got to be super prepared on their bullet points, notes, lectures, memorized or read. All the video and or audio lectures got to be like really, solid bullet points and or prepared things. In-class lectures, to me, it seems as though what I would call like the mini lecture. And it sounds like a lot of work. It's like that if you do a mini lecture, you got to turn all your lectures into TED Talks. It's not that it has to be that way. You can still give, 30, 40-minute lecture. What I'm saying is if we keep giving, hour plus long lectures in a live class setting, it can be a challenge for the modern day student to kind of, connect and maybe grapple with the material. So then what can we do for active learning? I'm saying it's real simple and I'm taking too long to get there. But active learning, one of the things we can do is, we can have a variety of assignments. You can have journal assignments, class discussions, assignments where students will record their answers, like an audio answer on their cell phone. Assignments where students will, make a video talking about, the work. Assignments where they can, underline, highlight, summarize. Now, maybe some of the things I'm talking about are maybe more appropriate for, say, music appreciation or American music, but the whole point is, I'm not here to give the coolest ideas necessarily, but just finding different modalities to lead into engagement. So the different modalities are certainly gonna help when there's different modalities in the class. While taking notes is important, if every assignment is based on writing or typing everything, that you probably want to explore other types of assignments. It'd make it more fun for you as a professor, and I would hope, and I think it'd make it more fun for the students too. So note-taking is super important, but before the note-taking, you gotta have like some chapters in a book to read, some poems to read. You know, there's gotta be something to read, or some video material, whether it's TED Talks or recorded audio or video lectures, where there's some connections that be made, so that then when they're reading the book or listen to audio lecture, video lecture, then they're taking notes from that. And then, you know, they lead into a live class where you're doing this mini lecture idea where they've already actually watched the lecture outside of class, whether it was 10, 30, or an hour, you know, and then the students are thinking like, well, why am I in a live class if I have to watch some video lecture or 30-minute TED Talk by Evelyn Glennie, How to Truly Listen? The point is when you're in the class so that it can be active, it can be participatory. So I guess some people call this maybe like a flipped classroom. Sure, I would call it an active learning classroom, but not active learning in terms of you got 4 or 5 people at a station with your big monitor and like you're rolling with the lecture and doing the assignments. That's a cool like classroom and works for a lot of people as well. I'm talking about active learning in terms of the flow. So you're like, we're gonna say like, hey, everyone's awesome at their content stuff. Like professors, teachers are just super awesome at all this content. They got it on lockdown. You know, the PowerPoints are short and sweet. If you do use them, no paragraphs. You're not reading the PowerPoints verbatim. It's just there to guide the flow of whatever the lecture is or mini lecture. So when you're actively learning, you are, you know, turning everything upside down or flipping it, or you certainly can think about it that way, but active learning to me is, it's how you present the subject, you know, matter, material, and it's the variety of the assignments. And when you mix all that together, it's gonna lead into being engaging. And so how, like I want to try to do that and encourage other people to try to do that and get students to understand, and maybe other professors like, oh man, what are we going to do about learners today? Is just have those different kinds of assignments in the course. So if the student is watching TED Talks and listening to all these lectures before a live class, then when you get to the class, like the very first thing to do, it's a music appreciation class. They have to watch a 30-minute lecture recorded by the professor, or they're watching a TED Talk. They do that before the class, then they go to the class. What's the next step? The teacher walks in, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to music appreciation. Let's talk about what you learned. Who would like to share? You know, maybe not everyone wants to chime in super quick, call a couple people, put them in the hot seat, but make it comfortable, cool, and happy. And then as you're doing the Q&A over whatever the required video assignment was to have a class discussion on, then the professor can then piggyback on things that each student says and hopes that more students will get on there. Look, you can't force students to do their homework. You can't force students to take notes. You can't force students to talk. You can certainly put things in your syllabus and make it all point-based, but then maybe you cause some undue stress, anxiety. I'm not saying we have to all be Care Bears necessarily, but you just got to finding middle ground can certainly be a challenge. I am able to get all of my students to participate in class discussions and do the work most of the time, but there are challenges like today where it just wasn't a good day, wasn't a good day. So, the students did that video like I was saying, and then, the professor comes into the class, welcomes the class, you get people chiming in on what they learned from the video, and in my case today, it was a ghost town. It was crickets. I did have a few, but not many. You're talking, I have a class close to 30, and there's 2 or 3 people that want to say a few words. It's relative to, it's almost a ghost town. So then where do we go from there? I think that with active learning, everything has to be there. It's got to have participation. I think we just have to think more about that. We all have to think more about that. But you don't have to lower your standards. Academic rigor must be maintained. Academic integrity must be maintained. Standards and quality, and be nice. Be nice. It's so important. Be kind. Be nice. So I think that these kind of ideas will work. But the modern day learner, they're a lot different than 5, 10, 20 years ago. So all we really have to do is think about what are things that we can do, like that just can really be a difference maker, in the short term, and then kind of look at the midterm or long term of all that. And I think it's, it's having, books and or video assignments before class and talking about those things in class discussions. I think it's finding a way creatively to get students to want to take notes no matter what's happening in the class. I think it's getting students to stop taking zeros. It's one of the biggest things. It's like zero after zero after zero. And I don't know, maybe this stems from, struggles in high school maybe, or where, maybe they got a lot more chances to keep turning in assignments late or whatever, but this is rampant in higher ed with just zeros everywhere. No one should be getting a zero on anything. Just do something, do something, anything. So I think these are all some big things to think about. So one of the things I did today in class was I asked the students a question. Okay, yeah. I asked them, what could I do to help you enjoy the class more? The responses were pretty interesting. So I got responses like, well, I thought this class was about just listening to music and talking about, the melody and the harmony. Okay, so maybe there's a part of the class that, of course, in a music class, music appreciation or American music, yeah, you're going to talk about those things. But that answer alone told me that the student didn't really understand what the class was all about. And it's very clearly stated in the syllabus. It's very clearly stated in any introductory videos, and it's very clearly stated in all of the live mini lectures and whatnot. So, I didn't get mad or anything. I don't do that. I just asked them. I want to keep things happy. I'm not a kind of dude professor that's gonna raise their voice or get mad or nothing like that. No. Just trying to see like where they're at. Where are these students at right now? I think the misunderstanding of the seriousness of classes, that even an elective course, has a serious nature, but it can still be fun. But I think if you fight the professor, or if you fight the curriculum, or if you want the class to be something different, but that's not in the curriculum, it's not a lot, the teacher can do in that. But there is an element of any music course that's, it's got that historical base or context that you're going to talk about, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. Yes, absolutely, the vocab words, but also how do you apply that to real songs? Whether it be Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or like Beethoven Symphony 5, Brahms Symphony 4, Love the Way You Lie, Skylar Grey, Alex the Kid, Eminem, Rihanna, like that whole flow. Sure, and I can go on and on with all these different kinds of songs, but there's a part of the class. The thing about talking about all the elements or the theory behind all the music is if you don't already have that background, you're going to be a bit limited. A music appreciation course specifically, you're not there to learn like theory and ear training and piano skills. You're there to learn, some history about the music, but many other things. So like you can, learn the elements of music, like what I was saying the words earlier, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. Boom. You're there to learn that. You're there to learn, about who's Mozart, who's Beethoven, who's Joseph Haydn, who's Bach, who's Vivaldi, who's George Frederick Handel. You're there to learn about, music maybe from the Middle Ages or Renaissance, or maybe, Elvis Presley or the Beatles. Like the class it has so many options, you can dig into. So I think for the modern day learner, I don't think it's that the student is allergic to work or they just don't want to do it. It is a really interesting thing. I think if we keep trying to experiment, that's probably one of the best things we can do. You could draw a line in the sand if you want, but you might just be unhappy, have inner turmoil, and you will, as a professor or a teacher, you'll end up working not only harder than the students, but much harder by probably 37, 40, 50 exponents, and that's not good for our health. So we've got to find those creative, happy solutions, and of course also not punish students in the course who really enjoy the flow of the class. And you may have one or two students that are just kind of, bucking or, fighting a little bit, metaphorically speaking, like they're just, So I think if we think about active learning as participation, team, instructor, professor, to the students, and making sure there's, some class discussions and some video homework. But also, if it's a music class, I'll play, all of the first movement of, say, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and we'll talk about it. There's tons of music, of course, played in the class. I'm not going to play maybe a 30-minute long piece or something like that, but a good mix of, in-class participation, in-class discussions, in-class music for a music class or any class. I think it's just mixed. If it's too heavy one way or the other, if it's just only lecture and no activities, it can be kind of a dull thing maybe for everybody. It doesn't make it right or wrong. I mean, it's totally up to you, kind of what you want to do. I think like active learning in 2024 and 2025, what is active learning? It's participation, and it's variety and assignments and modalities that you use. If we can dig on that, we'll be great. As I was saying earlier, just PowerPoints are cool, but paragraphs and a bunch of fancy sentences don't bode well. Short and sweet bullet points, and then have some more expanded notes that you can reference if it's not memorized. Shooting from the hip or being willy-nilly as a teacher, students read through that. Those days are gone. They're going to read through it, and they're out. We got to be on our ball game. We got to be super, super prepared with the things we do. We don't have to stress. No stress about it. Just prepare. And when the students buck or aren't feeling it, experiments. So I had a pretty big. The big experiment today for me was, this was an experiment to see, are they going to do the video assignment? Are the students going to be prepared? Did they do the video assignment, number one? Did they take notes, number two? And if I called on them or if they volunteered, were they able to? Did they read from their notes, or did they synthesize and maybe shorten or condense that, to get it digestible and so that more people could have a chance to talk, kind of thing. That was a big epic failure today on student preparation, and only just a couple of people actually taking notes or even doing the assignment. But the other thing also is, even in today, students were playing video games when I was doing like a mini lecture. Students are talking, students are playing video games. I mean, heck, at one time there was like 5 students talking. But for the whole time, there was constantly 2 students either playing games or talking. And you can spend your time disciplining students in class, but it doesn't seem to always work out. You could get razzle dazzled, but I mean, it's better probably just to stay the course, and find a way to get them, pause for a moment and get them involved in the conversation, an impromptu class discussion, and get those students that are causing a ruckus to connect. I don't know if that's the right or wrong way. You got to try something. It's all about these different experiments that we run. So with having students playing on their phones and video games and social media and not being all in, I think the danger for us as teachers is you'll just throw your hands up and be like, whatever. But don't do it. I'm never going to give up on students. Don't you ever give up on students. You got to keep going, no matter how rough it is for any teacher out there. Teachers work hard, and we carry that, our heart is literally, it feels like it's on our sleeve constantly, on my shoulder or whatever. So I want to keep encouraging both professors and students to push through the tough times and embrace the idea of active learning. Think about, like, if you want to be an active learner, all you got to do is be prepared. Number one, be prepared. And how do you be prepared? Take notes, read the book, read the chapters, read the poem, watch the assigned video, get better at taking notes, take audio notes, take handwritten notes, take video notes, do what works for you. Turn in the assignments, do the assignments, watch the tutorial videos, pay attention in the lecture. When there's time for questions, ask questions. The coolest thing about questions in any class that any teacher ever teaches is the more prepared the students are, the more meaningful the questions are, and then there's a lot of excitement. That's where the engagement actually happens, when the student's truly prepared. And it leads them to meaningful questions, and then they see that, like, spark, like the teacher sees the spark in the student sees the spark connection to the professor, and that there's some magic that kind of seems to happen there. So I think that preparation, but I think we are in the day of times of a lot of students just they don't want to take notes, or they want to play on their phone, or they miss classes, or they don't do assignments. I think the other danger for a student, and we're in some trouble area here where students, it's like the quality of their work is sometimes dictated by whether or not they like the teacher or the class, the subject, or the assignment. And it shouldn't be that way. The quality of your work should never be dictated by whether or not you like the class or the assignment. You should always do your personal best, like whether or not you like the class, teacher, subject, or assignment. I think it becomes a real concern when students do really amazing work when they think the assignment's cool or they like it. The real world just doesn't work that way. So we need to get back to the real world. But we also need to, be sympathetic and, empathetic. But while those words get tossed around, what I mean is just be kind, be nice, and experiment with things you do in your college course as a professor. And for students that are listening, you need to be prepared. If you think a class is boring, like someone told me today, your class is boring. And I'm like thinking, so my class is boring, but I'm talking about Eminem, Rihanna, Michael Jackson, the Beatles, Elvis, Mozart, Beethoven, BTS, Billie Eilish. That's just the tip. It keeps going and going and going. I'm talking about music, so many different artists. And a big part of what I focus on is the stories behind the music. I focus on the elements of music, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. I've said a few times in video. And I'll take a word like rhythm, and then I'll talk about rhythm, the organization of time in music. And then I'm like, all right, let's listen to Rap God by Eminem. Let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. Cool. Let's listen to Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. Let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. Cool. Let's listen to Black Page #1, and let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. What's happening there? Awesome. Let's take a listen to When the Levee Breaks, John Bonham with Led Zeppelin. Let's talk about the rhythm. So I'll take these vocabulary words and they lead us into songs and discussion. If that's boring, I don't know what else to do. Maybe that's not cool for some people, and maybe some people just hate that, and they don't want that. I guess, I don't know. So, you can't please everybody, and you can't be a people pleaser, and you can't be a brown noser as a teacher. And students need to understand that as well. We've got to teach the curriculum, and while at college, professors can choose their own books, and there's no way to talk about every single thing in any kind of music appreciation textbook or American music book. You have to get the best sampling that you can, and maybe rotate topics or subjects. I think these are important things to kind of think about. Teaching is a tough gig, but the modern day student is something that we've got to do a better job of connecting with. And the modern day student has to do a better job of, you can't just think that, college classes are going to be like, a drive-through at McDonald's or like scrolling through Instagram. As much as it pains me to say that, I enjoy making YouTube videos and posting on Instagram, but it doesn't supersede my learning or preparation and the things that I do in my life. So I don't know. I'm never one to blame social media and video games by any means. Maybe it sounds like it right now, but I do think that our attention spans, it's not what it was a few hundred years ago, and we got to work on focus and attention. Reading can certainly help with that. So as much as I love maybe playing a game now and then or doing these kind of things, I just make sure to do my work first. And I think if students can just get that work done, work, grind, work hard, work hard. Let's get into it. Okay. So I walked into my music appreciation college course today, and I tried something new and different. Not completely new and different, but basically I just did a few twists and turns on some activities and assignments that I normally do in the class. So I started like this. In our previous class, we were kind of already at the end of something, where basically in the class before last week, the whole lecture was based on musical texture and music. And in that particular lecture, I read through my lecture notes. I have basically, it's bullet points. It's 6 pages with the bullet points and some stories and some audio samples, examples to, of course, play and talk about, and then activities in the class. So not just reading from the lectern, about, word for word, line for line. Obviously, there's some organic flow to it, but basically my notes. It's my notes, and I've got everything, nice and organized and ready to go. So in today's class, we just had a few more pages. We had basically page 5 and 6 to go through. And on page 5 and 6, basically putting the third period on the paragraph 2, musical texture or texture in music. We were on what's called polyphonic texture or polyphony, which is 2 or more melodies at the same time, but obviously there's a little more to it than that. So I'll kind of explain, kind of how that works in, today's journal entry too, and really delve into that a little bit. Now, polyphony or polyphonic music, obviously there's a whole lot going on, and with these 2 melodies. But I think when we talk about the word and like what does it mean and how do we get to that, I think when you listen to this, to the song I'm going to talk about, or different samples or examples, kind of just pops out at you, in a pretty cool or rad kind of way. So while polyphony is busy and there's going to be imitation, you have 2 or more melodies that can basically, they can overlap, and we have like a stretto, like an imitation where, you've got a melody, and that melody is going to keep going throughout the piece, in something, I guess, in something like a fugue, which it's like, hey, what am I really talking about? When we talk about a fugue, say in the time of the Baroque period, or really a fugue in any time, but if we say, one of the pieces we listened to today was the Bach organ fugue in G minor. In the Bach organ fugue in G minor, you got this wicked, cool, awesome melody, kicks it off. It's really monophonic texture just for a little bit, and then the melody's going, and the melody gets to the end, and then the melody is, of course, going to keep going, moving around, but then you get that counter melody, or what we would call subject, counter subject, that kind of thing, and it gets really interesting with the layer of the melody here, and then in the organ fugue, the melody gets to the end, and then your counter melody comes in, but this one actually keeps going, giving it that overlap. But I mean, fugues can actually have the stretto or the imitation where it's like the melody is happening, doing its thing, and then you'll have that interruption before it even finishes. But this one still keeps going. It's some really cool stuff. At any rate, I digress ever so slightly, but I promise I'll fill in all the gaps here and whatnot in terms of what is a fugue and polyphonic music. How do you make sense of it based on if we make it as simply as like monophonic melody alone, homophonic melody and chords, and polyphonic or polyphony, 2 or more melodies played at the same time, overlapping like that, or it could be clean cut, but this one's still going to keep going. So if we just kind of think about the music, really think of it from the music first to get to the understanding of the vocabulary, words, phrases, and the genre, style, or form of music. It kind of really is super, super, super helpful. So what I did is on my last couple pages of notes, finishing up, the course mini lecture for today on texture, I started talking about on, page 5, right at the tippy top of, polyphony and, basically what it's all about, what I've already kind of talked about here so far. And then I went straight to the music. Okay, so where do we go from here? Like, how do we make sense of all this? It's pretty simple. We all like movies, sitcoms, well, maybe the occasional commercial, jingle, or Super Bowl ads. Commercials are kind of cool. But look, in movies, constantly all the time, there's all these really cool, neat things happen in movies and video games and sitcoms. And so in class, one that I started using that's relatively new within the past few years is from the movie Pitch Perfect. I think it's Pitch Perfect 2. I don't have my notes in front of me. I would love to say everything is picture perfect memorized, but I believe it's Pitch Perfect 2. And we've got a really cool example. Well, I think it's cool. I hope so. A really cool example of polyphonic music. So what happens is in Pitch Perfect 2, there's a scene where Snoop Doggy Dogg, Snoop Dogg, Snoop Doggy Dogg. Snoop Dogg is singing Winter Wonderland in the part of the movie. And it's a pretty funny sketch part of the movie that you can kind of look up. But Snoop Dogg is singing Winter Wonderland. And, you know, it's going great, but, you know, the producer's like, you know, anybody got any ideas? And like, what are we going to do here? You know, basically. And Anna Kendrick kind of chimes in, you know, well, just have him do it the same way that he did it before, you know, and then the guy's like, okay, let's do it the same way that you do. Okay, well, you get what I'm, okay. Do it the same way, basically. You can watch the clip to have a few laughs, but Snoop does it again. And then Anna Kendrick starts playing like a cool beat. Got some cool beat rhythm thing going on her pad or drum pad, the electronic machine that she was jamming with. And then Anna Kendrick starts singing Here Comes Santa Claus. So what you end up having is Winter Wonderland and Here Comes Santa Claus, and they're overlapping. It's cool. So it's like in the movie, at the end of Snoop's first phrase, Winter Wonderland, you get like some really cool syncopated rhythm from Anna Kendrick on the electronic pads, drum thing, whatever it is, you know, just a cool little, you know, beat maker, cool thing. And then at the end of his phrase, after she does a little, you know, drummy syncopated thing, then Anna Kendrick jumps in, and they're overlapping with those two songs, thereby giving it this polyphonic flow, two or more melodies at the same time, which creates that harmony. You know, so you got these two different songs. One of them has to start. It's like you got to have antecedent before consequent, right? You got to have a starting point. That's the thing about the Bach organ fugue. It's like it has to, you know, you got to kick it off before you can have, you know, in a fugue we say, you know, the melody in a fugue is a subject. You know, a subject is a melody is a subject. Fugue, yeah, of course. I mean, all the different genre styles and forms of music are going to have like some, you know, vocab words and maybe some different language things that are going to go along with that, and flow and style. Yeah, all that happens throughout, whether it's Middle Ages, Renaissance, Baroque, Classical, Romantic, and we keep going. Even if we look at, you know, like Japanese taiko drumming, mariachi music, you know, folklorico. We look at Indonesian gamelan. There's all kinds of things that go with all these different kinds of music. So what's the point there? What's the point here? It's that to learn about polyphonic music, it's not just about playing fugues, you know, from, you know, the late 1600s, early 1700s. Look at the Baroque period as, you know, 1600 to 1750. J.S. Bach, or Johann Sebastian Bach, you know, his stint is from 1685 to 1750. So it's not just like fugues that are like dense and cool and have, you know, imitation and stretto and, you know, clean cut melodies that'll end up overlapping when you get a counter melody or the counter subject, you know, subject, counter subject. You can have this in pretty much anything. And so I wanted to show the students an example of something, maybe it's not super duper modern, but quite a bit more modern, a few hundred years. You're talking Pitch Perfect 2 with Snoop Dogg and Anna Kendrick. That's, you know, you're talking like, you know, Bach's fugues in the late Baroque versus like Pitch Perfect 2 with Snoop Dogg and Anna. Yeah, we're a few hundred years apart, obviously. So my hope is that would kind of be it would be a hit with the class, whether it be live, online, hybrid. It definitely was a hit, and it has been for a few years. So what I did is I just played, you know, the scene in class, and then we talked about what was happening with those melodies and the drum beat rhythm thing and the machine she was using, and you know, what Snoop was doing, and then when she came in with the song, like what that really is, to get them to recognize that it's not just like the old music that can do that kind of stuff. It pretty much any kind of music, whether it's hip hop, rap, or country, or rock, or whatever. And so they liked it. It was pretty cool. They enjoyed it. I had a blast too. It was really fun. So and a lot of students, well, maybe not a lot, but quite a few students knew the movie or the song, and you know, they knew the words to maybe Winter Wonderland, and some of them knew the words to Here Comes Santa Claus. You know, a lot of people know the words, of course. So what I wanted to do after that was move on to another example of how students in a music appreciation course could just get a better understanding of the word polyphony, polyphonic, through the music, to understand like that, you know, that it's It's a lot easier to understand if you can just do it through musical samples or examples. So then, well, what's next? Well, you'd say, well, of course it's Bach, but not yet. We first have to talk about the song Blinded by the Light, originally written by Bruce Springsteen, and then Manfred Mann, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, they do their version of it. And it's pretty interesting. I think there's an argument right now on Blinded by the Light for Manfred Mann, not which one is more popular than Bruce Springsteen, because when you look it up, especially if you know it or even if you don't know it, Manfred Mann's version of Blinded by the Light, it's, as the kids would say, it's a banger. It hits. And probably some of Bruce's concerns were not that it became more popular than his, and now we just got darkness. Hey, maybe I should get some lights here. Hey, we lost some lights. I tell you what, here. This is, it's going to make a little bit of noise. I'm in the car doing my professor journal. Hey, there we go. Hey, sorry about that. Hey, it's going to make the video. Turn it on the car. You got to see what's up. So, look, I'll just move in a little bit, let the car run. I mean, we're here just kind of chilling. And so I think the big thing with the professor journal, diary entry, it just kind of sharing the day and thoughts in hopes that, hey, maybe it helps somebody. It certainly helps me to kind of get the day, like, to talk about things, and hopefully somebody else can enjoy this or learn something from it, or just leave a comment and say hello. Or, hey man, turn off your car. Why'd you make that big old noise in your video? I'm gonna leave all this in. That's what's up. All right. Maybe one person watches this, maybe 20, 30. It's all good. I'm just having a good time. So with Blinded by the Light, let me get the other light on here. Sorry about that. Get some more light. So what I was saying that, for Bruce Springsteen, great song, killer, cool song. I'm not gonna, spoil all the cool thunder awesomeness about the song, but Bruce writes it, Bruce plays it, obviously performs it, records it. Manfred Mann does their version of it. It does become more popular than Bruce Springsteen's version. There is an issue with the lyrics where supposedly, you can look at this on the internet, where Chris Thompson, or maybe it was Manfred Mann that chimed in, but Manfred Mann's the keyboard player. Chris Thompson at the time is a singer. Chris Slade is the drummer. I think we have, I believe Dave Flett, I don't have my notes, but Dave Flett, I think, was playing that wicked guitar solo, and Colin Patterson, I think, bass at the time. Hey, if I missed something, hey, correct me in the comments. I'm shooting from the hip on it, or just from here, as I'm just putting up an iPhone held up by a water bottle in a car, doing, diary of a professor, about the day. So at any rate, I think Bruce's big thing was there was an issue with one of the words in the lyrics that supposedly was a technology or, issue in the studio. And so when you listen to the recording of it with Manfred Mann from the time, with the crew, versus, say, maybe the video where they're doing it live on, like, Burt Sugarman's Midnight Special, I think, something like that. Yeah, there's some differences. I'll let you dig into that. I didn't dwell on that in the class, because the focus was obviously polyphony, and like, well, what does that mean, and how can I understand polyphony or polyphonic music through something like Blinded by the Light? All right, so basically I play the beginning of the song in the class, and get that, Blinded by the Light, because some of them never even heard it. I mean, maybe none of them, I don't know. I didn't take a straw poll or anything like that, but played the song just where Chris Thompson's singing Blinded by the Light, get that going a little bit. And then I cut loose. I basically move forward, scrub through to where Dave Flett's playing that just wicked, amazing guitar solo. And I play through it for him, let him really listen, take it all in. Then as, Dave Flett finishes that guitar solo on Blinded by the Light by Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and you end up getting this really cool, amazing thing played by Manfred Mann on the keyboard. It's called chopsticks. And I'm like making a joke in class, hey, if you want to know what to Google, when you know what to Google, it's pretty amazing, it's pretty powerful. So if this chopsticks melody is new to you, you want to have that in your ears, assessments, quizzes, essays, samples. Yeah, I mean, it's something that is pretty important to know. It's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, it's like everywhere, and anybody can learn it or play it, and it's fun and it's happy and it's cool. But at any rate, I don't recall if that was maybe Chris Slade's idea. It may have been. That's actually putting that in the song. I do know there was reservations about having chopsticks even in the song to begin with. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the drummer, maybe Chris Slade kind of chimed in on that possibly, or one of the other members. But I want to say it might have been the drummer, like kind of hyping that idea of like, what are we gonna do? After the guitar solo, it's so amazing. Like, what are we gonna do? What about chopsticks there? I mean, heck. At any rate, whoever idea or credit, it's in there. And so you get I played Blinded by the Light in the beginning, and then Dave Flett does the guitar thing. It's cool, throwing down on that guitar solo. You get Manfred Mann playing keyboards, playing chopsticks, and then something really cool is about to happen. Chris Thompson starts, after the guitar solo, connects to chopsticks on the keyboards, and then Chris Thompson is going to start singing the melody again, Blinded by the Light. And then in the video, if you watch the Burt Sugarman Midnight Special, if I'm saying it right, I hope so, you can see the drummer moves the microphone like that, and then right before the drummer starts to sing, you see him like go up like that. It's pretty wicked awesome. This is, probably what I didn't finish earlier, but that some argue that particular video and maybe other live performances they did were just as good, and honestly arguably better than what they recorded. I feel like that their musical flow of the Burt Sugarman video on YouTube, I feel like it's better than like my vinyl or CD or whatever. I don't know, there's just something really organic and fresh, and it's just so human. It's just amazing that what they did. So what you have is Chris Thompson singing the main melody, the chorus, and then in the video it looks like the drummer's singing that counter chorus. Now we also see that when they pan the video, you can see that Manfred Mann is like joining in on the singing, but is Manfred Mann lip singing, or is he really singing along, or is it mixed down? Is the drummer mixed up? Who's doing it on the album? I'm not trying to give all the thunder away for everybody watching, but it is kind of fun to try to do this in the class, to try to see, is it really the drummer singing the counter chorus? Is Manfred Mann lip singing, or is he contributing? If we listen to the CD or the vinyl, like, can we figure all that stuff out? I mean, I kind of have to see it, But at any rate, the whole point is not figuring out some mystic puzzle. I mean, heck, you can look at the video and, of course, figure all these things out, or look at multiple videos if you had to, and look at the credits on CDs and records. This stuff's easy to figure out. My point was trying to get them to like watch the video and like basically what you're hearing versus what you're seeing, and try to see if you can kind of get all that to align. Basically, they did. It was pretty cool. It was pretty friggin' cool. So, where's the polyphony in Blinded by the Light? Well, guitar solo, Dave Flett, chopsticks, Manfred Mann, Chris Thompson, bring back, obviously back to the chorus, Blinded by the Light, drummer move the mic, head up, start singing. It's like you got chorus and counter chorus. Chorus, Chris Thompson, counter chorus, Chris Slade, and Manfred Mann jumps in on one or the other, or, contributing something there. You can see it on the video, whether or not that's the same on the record. Again, I'm not going to give it all away here, because the whole point was like, that's polyphony. You had two melodies at the same time in Manfred Mann's version of Blinded by the Light. I mean, I think it's cool, but more importantly than what I think, what is important is what's actually happening in the music that is a fact. Like, it has this. So whether or not I like it or they like it or whoever, it's like we're looking at what's going on in the music, and you got them two melodies happening. So going from Snoop Dogg and Kendrick, Pitch Perfect 2, to Blinded by the Light, maybe a stretch in some regard, and then somehow we end the class with Organ Fugue in G minor by J.S. Bach, or Johann Sebastian Bach. Trying to say that with braces here. And this is probably the coolest part, and maybe the part that I'm always cautious of, like, man, I could talk for hours about one of my favorite, musicians and artists of all time. I could talk for hours about Bach. I could do the same thing with Eminem, I know, it's wild, right? But So we get over to Bach. This is the way the Bach flow went. Now, we talked about earlier about the activities and assignments. In the first 2 audio samples examples with Snoop Dogg and Anna Kendrick on Winter Wonderland and Here Comes Santa Claus, and then when I got to Blinded by the Light, it wasn't super participatory on those. What I was doing in the class was getting them to actually just listen actively, watch the video, listen, pay attention to the music, rewind, hit a few parts, have some class discussion on what they heard, maybe what they heard, what they didn't hear, and then I'm chiming in on stuff. But when we got to the really active part, I guess this is the biggest twist and turn, is when we got to Organ Fugue in G minor, I did something different that I have never done before. Now, I planned it, of course, and it was fun, and after the class, they didn't want to leave. Maybe it was their favorite part. So while we're quite a ways in the video, I hope everybody makes it to the coolest part. Maybe I should put this at the beginning. Here's what happened. So I played the Organ Fugue in G minor by J.S. Bach, and all I did was just play the beginning where it's monophonic, melody alone, before it gets really busy with subject, counter subject, or the double melody that happens. I played it a few times, just that main melody, which I'm not going to say I'm a terrible singer. I'm not even going to try. So I played the main melody a few times from the very, very beginning just to get it in their ears, but I made sure to pause it before it got to that double melody or the counter subject there, and just so there was no confusion. Then after playing it, 3 times, just the opening melody from the Organ Fugue in G minor by Bach, then I said, okay, get out a piece of paper, first name, last name, MAUSI 1306, just put music appreciation, put your section, and your job is just to count how many times you hear the main melody. Now, I'm in a computer lab. We're not using the computers, at least we weren't for today anyway. I had them all turned around, facing me, taking notes, clipboard, the whole 9 yards for this class and the previous class. Just at least that was today's flow. We do some different flow depending on the room and whatnot, but I've talked about that in a previous video. But at any rate, we're in the computer lab. I'm playing the stuff. They're taking notes. They're all turned around. They're all engaged. They're all facing me. We're doing our thing. It's cool. It's wicked awesome. So I play it, and I tell them that since I've played it for you 3 times, you got an idea of like what you're actually listening for. Now the idea is to follow that melody that I've been playing for you. Follow it, because it's going to just keep going all the way to the end. Now, sometimes you may not hear the main melody, like there may be some other things going on, but when you hear the main melody, your job is to listen for that main melody. And then in the beginning, it starts here, and you get that main melody, it finishes, and then there's a melody just waiting to just take over. And so the melody finishes, and then the counter melody starts at that counter subject, but that main melody is going to keep going. And I don't mean it's going to keep going like a choo-choo train forever. There are moments where that main melody may take a breather, and there's some other things happening, whether it be transitions and episodic or episode type things. So that certainly can be the hard part in fugues. What I did was I know, kind of kindergartenish, but I didn't mean it that way. I just said, hey, I'm gonna just count with you for a few of them to kind of help you. So, and I did it rhythmically based. I mean, I know it. I know the piece, so I'm able to like actually hold up exactly on where those changes are. So, I showed them right where 1 is as best I could, because you got to press play. Obviously, there's a little delay, but once I got to 2, it was like boom, and then 3, and then boom, and then 4, and then boom. So I was able to go right there, 2nd, 3rd, and what I was doing was I was showing them, when I held up fingers 1, 2, 3, and 4, is I was showing them, this is the first time you hear the main melody. The main melody is back again. The main subject or main melody is back for the 3rd time. Oh, guess what? You're hearing it for a 4th time. And then I was like, whoa. I was out. Then I'm like, good luck. Keep counting. When you get done, write the number, circle it. Now, this isn't super participatory yet, but it's going to get, if you stay with me, it's going to get a lot cooler. So they finish. I'm like, all right, it's done. We listened to the whole thing. That was it. We did 3 times on the melody alone, then 1 time straight through. They wrote their number, brought their papers up, and I put a big old pile, and I went through them to see how they did. And there was a lot of numbers, 7s and 12s and 8s and 9s and 10s. I have to tell you, pretty darn good actually, because I mean I've gotten like 100s and 40s and 80s. I've gotten all kinds of stuff, which, you know, you have to do exercises kind of leading into this so that you can get maybe them 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s, which none of those are really terrible answers. I guess some would say that, but I try not to, I don't want to be discouraging like that. It's hard to do that. They're not music majors, but they're there to learn how to actively listen to music of all walks of life. And that is really the crux or the heart of what I'm trying to get at here. So, they did a good job on that. So then the next thing that I did was I called up some people. I looked at the students that had either 8s or 9s, and I put them in 2 piles. I put the 8 piles here, and I put the 9 piles here. One of the answers correct, one of them is not. But the one that's not correct, it's pretty close. You know, the one that is correct, well, it gets even more interesting in just a moment. So then the next step was I called up the 8 group, and I had them stand at the front of the class and do the whole, when you hear the main melody, do this. And it's like, you hate to say ignore like the, you know, the counter subject in a fugue. And I didn't necessarily say that, but I did say focus on the main melody. Don't be distracted. Do your best to show the class exactly, aside from one, because you got to press play, show the class where you think, oh, you know, all of them are. And I was trying to see with the answer they put down on the page, does it match like what they're doing in front of the class? For some it did, for some it didn't, but I wanted to see if their answer changed. And it was interesting because a few of them did change their answer, but they could also prove it. Not that they necessarily have to prove it, but they were able to show me and the class, hey, what I wrote down, I missed one, and I was able to ask them, explain that or tell me why. Well, one of the hard ones to get in there is number 6, you know, the 6th time you hear it. So I stopped it at different points to say, hey, what number are we on? Or, you know, can you tell, like, you know, do you hear maybe a higher or lower or mid? You know, I mean, I could say soprano, alto, tenor, bass, or something like, ranges, but it's, you know, they're not going to know like lyric soprano, mezzo soprano, and bass and baritone. You know, it's music appreciation. I do teach them those things, absolutely. But it's, for them, just for music appreciation, just trying to get them to thinking like, well, is it a higher voice? Is it a lower voice? Is it a mid voice? Can you tell, you know, if you're watching the video, I mean, you can see like, you know, with the organ, you know, playing on, you know, your lower keyboard or whatever, higher keyboards, you know, organ has, you know, layers of boards, you know, keyboards, and, you know, you've got the feet, foot pedals, you've got the notes and the feet, and such an awesome instrument, you know. And J.S. Bach was just a organ virtuoso, just simply truly amazing. And so at any rate, as I went, you know, continued in the class and went to work on all these, basically working on experiments with the students and active participation. And so at the heart of the matter really is trying to get them to count how many times they hear the main melody. So once I was done with, you know, the running the experiment with the students who selected the number 8, because I had the 8s in one pile and the 9s in another pile. Again, some of the 8s did change their mind, and they did a great job of like doing this. And then me peppering questions on, you know, stopping randomly, like what number are we on, or what number do you think people usually or might miss, and that kind of thing. So not too terribly difficult, but it really got them thinking, and they did a great job. So when I moved on to the next group, it was the 9 group. And so I brought all the students up and basically did the same thing at the front of the class. Everybody went to the front of the class. The 8 group, all the students that selected 8 came up, you know. So, a few students selected 8. 3 students said 8. And I had, 3, 4 select 9. Just brought them up in 2 groups, and then had the 9 do the same thing. Listen to the whole song and basically stop the song at random points, ask them what number we're on. I would stop the song at random points and actually go to the students that were sitting like in the audience or the class side and ask them what number we're on, and do it real quietly and whisper, and then come back up and ask the players. So basically playing games with the students on asking them what number we're on by stopping randomly, and also asking the class that was sitting down the other side, kind of, obviously participating and really paying attention as the students in the front are trying to keep track of things while I'm stopping wherever, and then asking them questions. And so it was basically the same thing on that, on seeing, okay, did they change their number? Did they hear the same thing? Was it 8? Was it 9? What did they think? And they did really good. Most of them did pretty good. Not easy, but both the 8 and 9 groups did pretty good. Still didn't tell them the answer yet, though. Okay, so the last part of the class is the coolest. I brought the whole class. You're talking, 20 plus students, all to the front of the room, getting a big, well, not in a big line, it's basically a big glob, arcish kind of sorta. Played the song again, and we played a game. I don't know if it, not necessarily like Heads Up, 7 Up, but it's basically where, aside from number 1, because you have to hit the start button, I played the song again, and I wanted to play a game with the rhythm of the song, as well as listening to see, could they get the changes, with the rhythm. And if they missed it, you're out. So we finished up the class with working on Bach's organ fugue in G minor, and the goal was trying to follow the subject, counter subject, not be confused by that counter melody or counter subject, and follow the main melody throughout the whole piece, but trying to actually count, can you get those rhythmical entrances while, of course, keeping pace with the melody when it enters, and paying attention to that. So not just a rhythm thing, but just kind of following when the melody enters and getting as close as humanly possible to those entrances. And while, I'm doing the whole you're out kind of thing, it was really just, it was fun and games, engagement, active learning, active participation. I mean, it's fun for the teacher, fun for the students, learn about music from the Baroque period, but to have all different kinds of music in that lecture where, I'm talking about Blinded by the Light, Manfred Mann, we're spending some time on, Snoop Dogg and Anna Kendrick from Pitch Perfect 2 with Winter Wonderland, and Here Comes Santa Claus, and how that works with the polyphonic flow, dueling double melodies. Just, it was a hit. Pitch Perfect 2 was a hit. Blinded by the Light, that was a hit with, guitar solo, chopsticks, the chorus happening, the counter chorus, chorus by the singer Chris Thompson, counter chorus by the drummer Chris Slade. They loved it. It was fun for everybody. So with active learning and really in participation, where having the students just really be involved in the learning and participating, where it's not just a teacher walking around the room watching students do assignment in your college course, like the one I'm teaching, music appreciation. It's activities where there's different modalities, ways of doing it, the flow of the content, just having some mixed up variety and whatnot makes it fun for everybody, not just the students, but the teacher and the students. And there's just so much energy. And as the kids would say, there's some, that was fire, so definitely a lot of fun. After that class, the students were like, man, this is the coolest class ever, the best class ever. Man, this is really cool. This was funny. This was fun. So a lot of happiness, a lot of fun was had. I don't know, maybe it was a little bit cool, but the whole goal was walking away from, this particular lecture where we're talking about, textures, musical textures, and specifically wrapping up with polyphonic textures and how to understand them, whether it be rock and roll, hip hop, rap, or whether it be, straight up classical music or music from, the Baroque period, like fugues, and just trying to have an understanding of how all this works. That polyphonic music, it's not just music from the 1600s or 1700s or whatever, really anything can be polyphonic. And so I think we all had a really good time. And so I think if you want your class to be fun and exciting, you got to keep trying new and different things. Obviously, as best we can, stay up to date and current with the times, but enjoy the content that you teach and share that joy and passion, with the students. And, just, we gotta keep trucking, keep doing our thing. I hope this helps somebody out there. The plan or the goal is I'd like to be encouraging, motivating, inspiring, but really, these journals are for me. So if somebody else enjoys them, I think it's amazing and awesome. But I guess that's all I have to say. You gotta, every voice counts, every voice matters, and find a way to get your creative juices flowing and and sharing your thoughts and ideas, like, with the world, man. So, yeah, that's all I got. Good morning and cheers. We have the coffee. Is learning lost? Just think about that for a minute. Is learning lost? Is all learning lost? Is there learning? Is there active learning? Is there participation? Is, like, what's going on? What do we need to do to get that action Jackson, as I say sometimes? Well,